And before we conclude, it gives me great pleasure to welcome one of our key partners, Tata Consultancy Services, for making this summit and exhibition possible. Please help me welcome the President, Tata Consultancy Services, Asia Pacific, Mr. Girish Ramachandran.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to all of you. And I want to give some context and spend a little bit of time on talking about what a post-COVID recovery in ASEAN could look like. So all of us in the business sector, in a post-COVID world, we are all seeing how the three actors, which is governments, enterprises, and individuals, how can we all gear up to face a new normal? And the pandemic is fundamentally reshaping the world as we know it and accelerating the change that was already brought about by what we call the industrial revolution. And if I look at ASEAN, ASEAN is really at the center of it. And we have clearly two options. Option number one is to buckle under this immense pressure extended by the pandemic, or we have an option to choose to leverage on the situation to reinvent ourselves by leapfrogging other competing regional economies and to stay relevant and to stay ahead of this. Either way, we all know change is going to be inevitable. And I want to focus on 6 trends that I see specifically for the region's recovery. The first trend is on advanced manufacturing. If I look at it, even before the pandemic, most of production bases or manufacturing bases, because of the realignment in supply base, had already started shifting away into Southeast Asia. And if I look at a Maybank study, found that 33% in ASEAN received 33% more FDI in 2019, even before the pandemic struck us. And the pandemic has only accelerated this particular trend. And ASEAN has a very good opportunity to attract new investment in the manufacturing area because of this supply chain shift. The second important trend is on job creation, the sector that most of us are very keen to look at. If you look at COVID and the fourth industrial revolution, they've actually caused a double disruption to jobs. One, because of COVID, a lot of people have lost jobs. And two, because of industrial revolution and automation, there has been a renewed focus on labor, and the labor has, especially the youth, there has been a significant pressure on them. And if you look at the ASEAN 6, we could lose up to 7% of employees because of this, which should be the tune of around 21 million jobs we could lose. But having said that, the positive side of it is that because of all the opportunities which has been thrown around because of the industrial revolution, there is an opportunity to create another 100 million new jobs in ASEAN. And this is a clear opportunity for the area of job and job creation. So therefore, reskilling and redeployment at scale is going to be very, very crucial as far as ASEAN is concerned. The third important thing is on climate change. We all have been seeing the effect of climate change, and we can feel it around the world. However, Asia is at risk of feeling the most extreme climate change issues, and we could potentially lose up to 4.5 trillion in annual GDP by 2050 in Asia. And a substantial portion of it will be in ASEAN because of lethal heat waves. And this is something that we should all be concerned about. The fourth trend, which I want to talk about, is in the area of aging. And some of the most rapidly aging countries in the world can be found in ASEAN. By 2035, if I look at people over 65 to be the aged, we are going to be seeing 27% of them, of people in Singapore to be aged, 23% of people in Thailand to be aged, and almost 20% in Vietnam to be aged. Whereas the global average is in the region of 9%. And another thing which is very unique in ASEAN is also that majority of the youth, in 60 to 80% of the youth across ASEAN live with their parents, which makes it increasingly difficult for the whole area of how do you provide family support for elderlies. The fifth trend which I want to talk about is urbanization. Okay? If you look at the progress towards industrial revolution, urbanization has contributed significantly towards that. So much so that by 2050, almost 70% of the population in ASEAN could be living in urban areas, vis-a-vis the 50% that is there today. So this is going to exacerbate the pressure on urban infrastructure as well as the quality of life. The last trend which I want to talk about is food and food security. Today, with 14% of the population below poverty line in ASEAN and almost 60 million people undernourished, food security is going to be a very, very important challenge which government and enterprises need to be worried about. And the pandemic has only caused this, has only exacerbated this particular situation, leaving the most vulnerable groups at risk of hunger. So ensuring a sustainable supply chain, sufficient, safe and nutritious food for ASEAN will be the key. Now the question, if I look at all the 6 trends which I talked about, how will ASEAN cope over this and stay ahead of this particular curve in the post-COVID Industry 4.0? And technology could probably be a solution for some of, and give some answers to some of the problems. If I look at COVID has required most of us to work from wherever we are, and it has clearly helped us adopt what is called remote working. So I believe that working remotely and being able to live in a rural area can reduce urbanization to a significant extent. Similarly, in the area of food security, today, if 300 million farmers are able to get digital access, we could generate an additional 500 million tons of food, and that can provide an additional income of almost 200 million to farmers. Similarly, in the area of aging, we have non-intrusive sensors available today, which can actually have a data and data analytics package, which can provide health issues so that ecosystems could be developed, and we could develop patterns and provide ecosystems for people to age in the security of their homes. In the area of manufacturing, a concept which is gaining prominence is what is called digital twin. And digital twin can not only help manufacturing, but also can help reduce energy consumption as well as reduce the carbon footprint across the whole value chain. And finally, there is a focus on automation could help productivity, but can also create a new cadre of jobs that can be fulfilled. So the last few months has taught us that digital transformations cannot happen in a vacuum. In post-COVID, digitization, innovation, and sustainability are going to be the real pillars of growth. And one thing is very clear: governments, enterprises, and individuals, all the 3 of them, have to take ownership of the future. While enterprises or businesses like us build our business robustly, there is a strong intersection between government and private sector. When enterprises like us generate demand and we provide frictionless services to our customers, there is a strong role of the government to provide what is called to build a digital spine for every country, so that enterprises can leverage on the digital spine. For example, a digital spine in a South Asian country which TCS developed, actually helped one of the telcos in the particular country acquire something like 300 million new customers at a cost of less than $2, whereas typically a cost of acquiring a customer could be in the region of around $25. So that is the power of what we call the digital spine. Industry 4.0 is also fundamentally reshaping industries, and businesses are also finding it extremely challenging to keep up. And if you look at companies which has existed for beyond 100 years, you can actually count them in your fingers. And those companies who have really stayed beyond 100 years are people who have created what is called the long-term purpose. And long-term purpose looks at generating long-term financial value, but they've also committed to a few other things as well. One is long-term value for shareholders, but they've also looked at how do you embed delivering value to customers, investing in employees, dealing very fairly with suppliers, as well as supporting communities at large. And today, technology is actually enabling the balance between what is called doing good and making profits. And digital sustainability is about using and regulating digitization to maximize the value to our society. This is going to be the future for businesses. Last week, we, along with Auckland University, launched the world's first Asia Pacific-led digital sustainability index, so that we can actually figure out which enterprises are there who are implementing digital sustainability for the good of the society. As governments and businesses play their role, individuals or digicens, as we call it, digital citizens, we have a responsibility as well, which is to keep reinventing ourselves and reskill ourselves. So there is clearly a role for the government, which is to build the digital spine, for the enterprises to look at the entire value chain and provide purpose-led value chain, and for individuals to ensure that we keep reinventing ourselves and reskill ourselves. To conclude, this extraordinary human and economic crisis really offers a unique opportunity where I believe that sustainability and economics can go together. We have a very unique opportunity to create a new normal rather than going to the old ways of working. I have always believed that the fourth industrial revolution is not about technology nor about business. It is about society and society at large. And the pandemic has demonstrated that human societies can transform themselves. I believe that the pandemic will completely reshape the world as we know it. And technology is going to be at the center of this particular transformation, enabling what we call smarter cities, smarter citizens, and smarter workplaces. Thank you very much.